Alright, what's up everybody? We are going to do essentially a rebuild here. So I tore the HYP-R down. Um, that was mainly all the aluminum version that was from Pokornyi, from parts from their own list of DIY parts instead of 3D printing a lot of the options. So I had to tear it down for just a couple maintenance reasons. Needed put the spacer in the hub and put a little bit of Loctite on it just so those screws didn't loosen up. So figured in the meantime I would just do a build video showing how this one goes together. So some of the steps, like the screen being on the Vocor 5-inch screen, is already going to be done. Just a few other things. Most of the other stuff I have undone to kind of reset to show as much as I can show. So we'll jump right into it. First step in the instructions is actually going to be to put on the button caps. Since this was a rebuild, I already have some that are already labeled with what I chose to label them with. So grab my phone that has the picture of how they were, so I put them back the same. Hopefully everybody had a good week and many hours of sim racing in your future. They're nice, just snap right on. They're not in any order for me, so as I see them, I'm just throwing them on. There we go. Got our 10 buttons on. Nice and clicky. Sure to pick them all. I just had a half 3D printed. I had a my own fault. I started to print midway through and then had some issues with a clogged print head. So I had half of a bracket. Nice just as a table support. Next up is actually installing the Vocor screen, which is already done, and the cable is installed on the back. So this one is not like the newer versions where the USB-C from the Vocor itself just plugs straight into the board. This is still on a USB-A, and so you have to have a small cable, and I have the cable in there. There is also, it's tough to see, but they do have you put in a 3D printed spacer just between the Vocor little board, just to kind of give it some space so it's not smashing down there. And again, applied a sheet of tape, then set the Vocor on that, and we were good to go. So on the back, we've got our encoders up here, which it gives you an additional set in case you wanted to modify. So there is only one set of thumb wheels that are on this one on each side. So you will have extra ports up here if you wanted to modify something to add additionals. And then we'll have switches, so 2 rear buttons, and I have opted for 4 shifters, so these will be full. And then this will be our USB in with our GX12 plug adapter, the 4-pin. And then our 2 clutches are down here at the bottom. Go through a bunch of pages because our programming is already done since we've done this before. I also went with the aluminum enclosure. Next up, kind of a fun part here. We've got a little bit of a tight squeeze. So up in the corners here, we've got to put in the push buttons that will be on the rear. So I've already have the wires soldered in. I believe these were recommended at 200 millimeter length. Very thin wires, so got to be careful to not torque them and rip them straight out like I just did. So obviously twisted them too much. Fine, we will fix them in a moment. Originally, they actually have you soldering these on. What's up, Mike? Before or after you've actually installed them. So I'm kind of doing it out of order. Tried. Obviously, this is unsuccessful now, but that's all right. Not much that can actually get in here to tighten it. So once you get them in there, it's kind of as good as it gets. See if we do this one any better, or if I gonna be soldering both back on. Seems to have went better for now. That side seemed to stay intact. Right back, go grab some solder. All right, you're back. No, we're not. Let's try this again. Unlike the brass inserts that we did the other day in another build, these will these are done at 400C instead of 250. Thing I would highly recommend too is there's, at least in the push buttons that I went with, there is options to solder them kind of on sideways a little bit because of the clearance with the board. These are so tall that they are pretty much right up against the beveled edge. So I would definitely recommend soldering them in sideways. Just checking the other ones while it's here. the heat shrink just a bit, get it close. Set that to the side, those should be fixed. All right. Now, the buttons are in. Well, let's continue on. Next up will actually be the thumb wheel install. So they're going to go here and here. I guess you can't see it when I'm holding the thing up. So here and here. With the aluminum enclosure versus the 3D printed enclosure, the 3D printed one will actually already print with the post to mount these in sideways. With the aluminum enclosure, I assume just because of the process and maybe it was easier, you actually have to bolt these in. Don't think for this scenario there is a right or wrong orientation. Just 2 screws. In this bracket. All right, those are in. Next up, we bring our encoders. Taking the nut off. The other thing we have to do at the same time is actually, because of the way this fits in there, you kind of have to be sliding the nut on and the thumb wheels themselves. Make sure they're backed out enough to slide on there. These get tightened up with a 10mm wrench. At least I thought it was a 10mm wrench. it is, but I picked up the 8. That's much better. Making sure we put the set screw with the flat end of the rotary encoder. There's one. Do the other side, same way. For clearance reasons, it's also, there is, in the actual plugs themselves, you have to clip off. There's 2 clips at the top, just for clearance with the board once the board comes down and sets on it. So you do have to trim the 2 tabs off the top that we don't need to worry about, because these are also push. You can push them in, but that function won't be working with these. Next up is our GX12 to USB. So much like the other wheel, you kind of gotta bend the wires back over the pins. Make sure your orientation puts a little tab at the very top. This is another item that will, because the pins are tall, will have a clearance issue, so you kind of have to start bending them down to the side a bit just to kind of start getting them prepped for kind of bending once the board's wanting to come down on it. All right, next up is the hub. I didn't take this all apart, so I still have my semi-cube QR2 on here, bolted up to the whatever I determined last time, 76 millimeter extension plus my 15 additional here. And just from the little bit of testing that I did do, that's why one of the reasons I was taking this apart was to add the spacer, but some of these had worked loose just a bit. Not a ton of it, but just a little bit at the bottom third of the threads here, just to have something for it to kind of keep it secure. Not tightening anything yet until I get all 6 of them in there. Going slowly, star pattern just to get them snug. Back through with a right angle guy where I can get a little bit more torque. All right. Next up, we got shifter installs. These are going to go in with M 3x8s. 4 per shifter. Use a lot of M3s, button heads, and M4 button heads and things like that. So just to show you what I'm working with, these are M3 to M5s button head, and we have another set of M3 through M5 countersunk flatheads for things that are been recessed to sit flush. Again, move a bit. Tightening anything up, not even getting them snug, just to make sure everything gets lined up. Don't pinch wires, that kind of thing. Make sure I didn't hit some random hotkey on the keyboard when that just did that. Hopefully not. Or your screws don't stick to the magnets and then you can't find them. Better. I think when I was soldering and shaking the table, my camera moved a bit. Alright, next up, got all 4 shifters in. So next up would be the clutches. The clutches from the aluminum enclosure option to the 3D printed option are a little bit different. There's actually an adapter, a bracket for the aluminum enclosure. So these don't just bolt straight in. So you actually have this, but you got to put this plate on here for the aluminum enclosure option. There is a orientation to these. 2 opposite sides are beveled, so you have the finish outside where your paddles and things would actually be at, and then the inside there's bevels on these and provided with their screws that come with the kit. You have to install them. The shifter plates look like that. Like I said, these mount a little bit different. They come through and you use one M3x8 button head on each side. And that will be on the up here on the top or towards the outside of the housing, or outside of the shifter outside. And then what you have to do with the two centers here and here on each side, so 4 in total, is you're actually bringing up another M3, but this time you have to put a nut on the inside. Before we tighten them up, I'll just go ahead and get the other ones in, do all the tightening up at once. This one, you'll notice, compared to the 499 build that I did, has a whole lot more wires running around. That's where it's nice with the newer design of the circuit board, with that 499 wheel having all 6 rotary encoders and everything right wired into the board itself, instead of like these options where the encoders are on the outside. Just gonna snug those. So now we gotta tighten up the 4 options here. We got to get at them from both sides. I found hemostats to be the best option here for holding the locking nuts. We use the hex driver on the other end. So just make sure one more time that the outside ones are tight. Seems like a pretty good fit. Next up, I'm going to flip the upside down here. And we are going to install some paddles. Shifters go on with clutches. Keep saying the opposite thing that I'm meaning. Clutches go on with M4 screws. The rest of the shifters will be M3. I believe they were 3x8, but I need to go verify, double check. Yep. So again, clutches just take 2 each side, or for each paddle. The shifters take 4 each. After all 4 are in, now I'll actually snug them up. The other side's on. All right. We have shifters and clutches. Next up, bringing the board back in. Gonna start plugging stuff in. Comes quite the rat's nest. What's up, Sean? How are you? Having a blast, man. Just plugging wires in, plugging away here. So now the fun part is you have to make sure that all of those are clear of standoffs. Everything else that's underneath the board. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's coming together pretty well again. Built a couple of these, so not too bad at this point. This right here is probably the hardest part of the whole thing, is just making sure to not pinch stuff. All the coils have a different mind So it's a little bit different as well, because with the aluminum enclosure, you actually have 4 bolts and standoffs that are already in, and then 3 here in the open holes at the top that standoffs on the wheel itself will go in and then come from the back side. So the other version that's 3D printed enclosure is a all 7 of those come in with standoffs from the front frame and then bolt into the back. Thanks. Yeah, the 499 wheel turned out really good. I did get it troubleshot. Had a slight issue when my first debut Tuesday night in the F4 series. I'm catching up on the comments, Sean. Tell her I am sincerely sorry and I apologize. But yeah, the 499 wheel, minor issue. Got it taken care of though. Got it straightened out. Got a new part coming. So not a big deal in the end. One of the clutches was not working as it should. In a couple hours, problem was troubleshot, resolved, and new parts headed my way. So excellent customer service in my mind. And on top of the quick replacement, they also gave me some discount codes for the next time I order something. All right, next up, now that the board is sitting in there, it looks pretty good. Is the light guides. So these are 3D printed. All those are doing is going to direct the light from all the LEDs up and out of the wheels around the buttons. I believe those are M3x8s in the center for the 4 around the light ring up here. And then the other 8 mounting ones are 3x6s. Can't leave your phone sitting around. It's #1 rule. You leave that thing sitting around, it's open game. Anybody can pick that up. All right, 4 are in there. Go with the little bit shorter M3 screws on the rest of them here. One of these days I'll learn the direction I need to go to match the camera. Today's not that day. Again, none of these are tight yet. Sean, did you see the posts about the invisible dash today in the Discord? Be a nice nice option. Nice feature for those that are running those types of dash and are blocking the screens. All right. To the back just a bit. Bringing the frame in. So like I said, I've done some assembly on this and had it tested for a little bit, and then decided I wanted the spacers, so started making those. So standoffs, the 3 standoffs in the top are already in. I did not want to take the graphic off that was over the top of the 4 rotary encoders, and also the little plexiglass light rings that help spread evenly the light coming up. Didn't want to take all that off and try to re-stick it and it not stick very well. So I still have a protective film on the screen itself, just so I don't do something stupid. Yeah, it was pretty cool. It'll take your in SimHub you can create a dash, and Daniel Newman has actually got a free version now to, I think, make it a little easier. But it's it basically will take your dash and you can flip to another dash, like have it in your favorites, and then you can take that and basically it will mirror whatever image from the screen. So directly behind it, if it's blocking your screen at all, you can set it up to where it sends an image of your main center monitor, so you can see like replay controls, like for iRacing, things like that. Oh, before we put that in, I got to get the button plates. So aluminum button plates. So those go in with 3x8 button heads. Like I said, if you think you have enough M 3x8s and 3x6s, you don't double your order. They're used everywhere. So that's going to be on the 2, and there's actually one bolt that comes in the center of them. Again, until you get them on there, leave it a little loose for now. So there, we got the button plates on. at least the first screws. Need some countersunk, friends. These are M3 by 10 countersunk screws. Now these go through the front. Like so, but what we actually have to do on the back side is these don't have to be locking, at least they don't picture locking, so I'm not using locking, just two nuts on the back side to hold them in. We'll go back and snug the two that we originally put in there, just because now once it goes on, we won't have a chance to reach them again. Alright, so there's that. Again, next up would be standoffs. We already have the 3 standoffs in for the aluminum enclosure option. If this was the non-aluminum enclosure and you're doing a 3D printed enclosure with the carbon fiber backplate, then you would have 4 more of these same standoffs. Do this all the time. Light guards just sit in there. They don't bolt down. Not all of them, at least. The ring does. Just checking to make sure that those standoff holes up at the top were clear. Check the screen one more time for cleanliness. And the inside of this screen. So normally the screen, the glass piece is not on here yet, but that was one of the things. Couldn't really pop this back off, didn't want to. I didn't have a second set of stickers, and those 3 screws are then behind that glass, keeping it in there, so that's why that kind of all stayed together. Next up we have M4 by 10s. And these are countersunk. And then 4 will go from the front, 3 from the back. Other three are right here along the top. And one thing you want to definitely make sure is that there is no wires pinched behind these three. Had it the first time, saw wires sitting there. Alright, those are snug. The next thing we have is up here at the top of the button guards is the button plates is, I believe they are 3 by 18 countersunk. And I think I left my parts tray in the other room. I'll be right back. Yeah, this was one link that my tackle boxes of hardware did not have. So next up, after we put those the screws in up here, that's when we would be putting in the plexiglass kind of light guides, and then adding this their decal over the top. Now would be also when you're plugging and gluing the glass down. And then next thing we have to do so I ran this HYP-R in a couple races now, and I've ran the 499 wheel in quite a bit of testing, and in some race scenarios. And the Gomez is still really nice. They've all got a lot of similarities, I think. But there's quite a bit of difference between all three of them, I think. So they give you these double-sided tape sheets that are already cut to the shapes, so it's just a matter of sticking them on. Make sure to put it on the right side, because one side does have like a slight bevel where the other side is pretty flat. So obviously you want to put it on the flat side so the beveled side is up and a little smoother as your hands are coming across it. Don't freak out if you're seeing the glass. Remember, there's still a protective covering film on that that's pretty beaten up at this point. What this is actually doing is covering up the screws that we put through the front plate. Obviously, I ran this wheel so I know the board and the connections and things like that are okay. It's nice that they do give you a couple extra pieces of it when you order it from them with the double-sided tape, just in case you do need to pop it off, like in the case that I did after I realized I wanted spacers and other things. There we go. Next up is the funky knobs and the rotary knobs, the four on the front. Again, these are aluminum. They did not have the stickers that came with as part of the sticker kit. Since I was already running it, I had some pre-labeled. Again, those don't have to be over tightened too much. Don't want to strip them. That's for sure, and especially with these funky knobs. All right. Guess what? We are done with assembly. Let's find the USB cable. And let's fire up SimHub. Yeah, let's try something. There we go. I think this was actually hooked to the other screen that I was running on the wheel that I had built. So then you can get into menus, like we have dual clutch here, that shows that one's 40%. There's a 50%, and I think that was set to 45. You can also go into nope, something else on my brain. Typed the wrong thing. There you see my clutch bite point. There we go. One successful build again, rebuild. So thanks for watching. Catch y'all on the next one. Got some more parts coming in, so stay tuned.